Science. For today, we're going to begin with a review of your homework. We're going to be looking at igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks and the rock cycle. And then our new material today will still focusing on the geosphere. We'll be studying crystal formation, geodes. We'll be looking at different types of weathering, both mechanical and chemical weathering. We'll be looking at erosion, deposition, and soil conservation. Then at the end of class, you'll get your homework for this coming week. So the first thing that you had in your homework from last week was some textbook reading, and you responded to me with something that you learned, something you found interesting, a connection you made, or a question it made you think of. So this reading focused on the type of rocks, and then it also began an introduction to crystals. So we had a little bit of new material, but mostly review material. So some of the things that you told me were you thought it was interesting that the crystal size helps you know if a crystal was likely formed when it cooled at the Earth's surface or deep in the Earth and the rate at which it cooled. And that's going to be some of our new material today. We're going to be talking about how crystals form and different characteristics of crystals. Someone said, I found it interesting that even though minerals are in rocks, minerals are not rocks. Remember when we defined a rock? We said that we have three main characteristics that a rock has to be naturally occurring. It can't be man-made. It has to be a solid and that it contains minerals. And then this person also commented that they found out about the difference between salt crystals and sugar crystals. And that's actually elaborated here. Someone said, I thought all crystals are minerals. It's interesting that salt and sugar are both crystals, but only one is considered a mineral, right? Salt is a mineral, but sugar crystals are not a mineral because sugar crystals are made from living things, plants. So when we get into crystals today, we'll be talking more about this. This person said that what I found interesting is that igneous, this prefix, this root igneous, means fire, and igneous rock is formed from magma deep in the Earth's crust that's pushed up during tectonic movement. So they were connecting this root igneous that means fire with the fact that magma is very hot and igneous rocks are formed from magma. Okay. This person said, I never knew that pumice can float. I thought that all rocks sank. And I know what you mean because if we think about throwing a rock into a lake or a pond or a puddle, we would think it would sink, right? But something I learned is that some igneous rocks are so light they can float on water. Igneous rocks can also be the hardest and heaviest rocks on Earth. So depending on how that igneous rock formed, it might be light or it might be hard and heavy. But when we look at this piece of pumice, it's not just that it's lightweight, right? It's that it's light compared to its size, which is density, right? It has all these holes in it, which means that it's full of air, and that air is very light, so the rock is not dense. It's less dense than water, which means it will float. All right. On the second day of your homework, you looked at some vocabulary words, and then you used those words in a sentence to show me that you understood the meaning of the word. And we talked about how a quality sentence here would give me more information so that I understand what the word means, right? So they gave you the definition erosion, which we'll be learning more about today. It means the wearing away of the Earth's surface by wind or water. And this person wrote, we could see where erosion wore away the riverbank. And that's a great example. It helps us know the meaning of the word erosion. The wind caused erosion on the side of the mountain. The Great Flood caused erosion throughout the earth. The cave was made by erosion from water. So the cave was made by the wearing away of the Earth's surface. Great examples. For igneous, You said the ground was covered with igneous rocks because the volcano had erupted and left lava everywhere. The lava hardened. The scientists went searching for igneous rocks after a volcano's eruption. My counter is marble, which is metamorphic rock. It was so hot that a rock changed into a metamorphic rock. I don't like it when sediment gets in my shoes. The sediment, which had been building for many years at the bottom of the lake, created great nutrients for plants and the ecosystem. The scientists found many different animal shells and bones in the sedimentary rocks in the mountains. When driving to Hua Hin in Thailand, we saw limestone mountains that have been weathered for hundreds of years by wind and waves and created unique shapes. Over many years, the scientists watched the rock on a mountain with high winds and a rock in a river as they changed from weathering. Right? So you did a great job on that assignment. If you look in Canvas, you'll see the assignments graded and my feedback to you. And then on the third day, you filled out a graphic organizer where you told me what you knew about the different types of rocks. You told me how they were formed and some key features. And then when you filled out your diagram of the rock cycle, you used those key features to draw each type of rock. So we'll just look at that briefly. As a review, you know that igneous rocks are formed by the cooling and hardening of hot molten rock. They're formed from magma within the Earth's crust or from hot molten lava after it reaches the surface, and they tend to be a strong rock. Right? So these are examples. I took these from your homework. These are pictures that you drew, and some of the things that you included in your drawing, you gave the rock texture. Maybe it looked glassy or coarse, depending on how quickly it cooled. Igneous rocks can have crystals in them. They might have holes, and they also could be very hard. So when I looked at your pictures, I noticed some of those features. So excellent job on those. Then for sedimentary rocks, you know that they form from small pieces of other rocks or minerals, mud, silt, or sand. That's called sediment. And over time, the layers are pressed under more and more layers with time and pressure. They turn into sedimentary rocks, and we often can see those distinct layers. So that's one of the key features that you included in your drawing, right? These layers. You might have also included cracks. This person drew a fossil in their rock. Sedimentary rocks are the most common type of rock to find a fossil in. And then lastly, you looked at metamorphic rocks. These are rocks that have changed their form. They were originally another rock, but with heat and or with pressure, they changed form. Some of them change appearance and others hardly change their appearance at all, right? So in a metamorphic rock, we're looking for features like crystals, or it might have very thin sheet-like layers. We call that foliation. They might have visible minerals, they could be hard or dense, and we would rarely see a fossil in a metamorphic rock. All right. So you did a great job on all those assignments, and you have feedback on them in Canvas, so make sure you take a look at that. Today, we're staying in the geosphere. We're continuing our study of the geosphere, and we're going to be looking more at crystals. Crystals are minerals with a definite shape, and they have easy to see flat sides. So if you look at these pictures on my slides, you can see that they have a shape, and you can see these flat sides that are forming a crystal structure there. Right? So when crystals form, this happens in two different ways. The first way is heat with pressure. The second way is water evaporation. When a crystal forms because of heat with pressure, what happens is the atoms of the minerals in the crystal are sticking together and forming a pattern. Okay? When a crystal forms because of evaporation, there's water that has dissolved minerals trapped inside a rock. And when that water evaporates, the dissolved mineral pieces will stick together in a pattern and you'll be able to see a crystal. And actually, in one of your homework assignments today, you will be making a saltwater mixture and then putting droplets of that salt water on a piece of dark colored paper. And when the water evaporates, you'll see the salt crystal left behind. And this dissolved minerals in water that evaporates is how a geode forms. And we'll be talking more about this in a few slides. First, we're going to look at crystals forming very quickly or over long periods of time. A crystal like salt can form in minutes to hours. And that's why in your homework assignment, you'll be able to see a salt crystal from the dissolved salt water that evaporates. You'll be able to see that in 24 hours or even less.